People of the internet, the downfall of Joe Rogan is finally obvious, and today we're going to learn why. Right meow.
In the comedy mecca of Austin, Texas, Prophet Joe Rogan has created his own Kaaba, the comedy mothership, casting out all other Austin comedians to different cities and converting all remaining to the monotheistic religion of stand-up with Joe Rogan as its prophet.
Cheeseburgers.
Those seeking to gain his approval and become loyal followers make the pilgrimage from all across the country to bask in its free speech glory. They sing his praises, tell him of his greatness, and jump at the chance to join his inner circle.
You know, it could be official now. I think everybody's said this. I think we're all in agreement. The Rogansphere is officially a cult. I think we just need to say it. There's no more hiding. Obviously, Joe isn't hiding his cult-like tactics, and we're not hiding our feelings and what our eyes can see. I think we can confidently say that the Rogansphere is officially a cult. Mark the day on the calendar. It's officially cult naming Rogansphere Day.
If they make fools of themselves. All are desperately following for the slim chance they make it to the ever-elusive Joe Rogan podcast. And if they're really lucky, the comedy mothership green room.
He took it to the point where you can't get in there unless you got a code. There's no just walking in. You're not going to walk in.
But what if I told you that all of this was a castle built on sand, and with each passing day, the cracks begin to show in the foundation? There are two essential tenets that went into the building of this comedy empire, and both are beginning to fall. The first one, of course, being stand-up comedy. Naturally, you can't have a comedy club without stand-up comedy. Joe Rogan, the prophet of comedy, has described stand-up comedy as his ultimate passion, so let's dig into that. For somebody like myself, I am very skeptical of stand-up comedy, which is weird because I remember I used to love stand-up comedy, but as I make these videos, I'm starting to ask myself, was it ever good? I've talked about so many bad comedians and watched so many awful stand-up sets.
While Fast and Furious's tagline is, never give up on family, ours is similar, never give up on the family of apps.
Boo, you suck. That I question, as a form of entertainment, is this even good? We've established that of Joe Rogan's LA comedian crew, almost none of them were funny. Bert Kreischer, Brendan Schaub, Joey Diaz, okay, maybe him. So when Joe Rogan brought his comedy pals out to Austin, he was able to handpick them and decide who he thought had the right stuff. Surely they're funny, right?
I bought the headlight. I go to my parking lot, their parking lot, and pop it in. Why would it be my parking lot, right? My parking lot is not in an auto zone.
These guys were Joe Rogan approved. The LA ones weren't as funny, but he basically had a clean slate in Austin. So you get people like the comedy mastermind, Tony Hinchcliffe.
A lot of people don't know this, but I study the Canadian healthcare system because they brag about how good it is. And I like to do my own research just to make sure that I live in the greatest country on planet Earth, and I do. I don't know if you guys...
That's the kind of attitude you have when you're like in your 20s and you think you're smarter than all the like people that have lived longer than you, and you're basically just doing what they did 30 years prior, and they're just sitting watching you and be so proud and so full of ego, and really everyone just thinks you're a dumbass. Did I just describe Tony right there? I think I did.
Know this, but Canada does rides now for anybody that wants one. Am I correct?
No.
Who is so funny that his entire show revolves around the fact that he is not funny, so he has to bring on funnier comedians. A metrosexual, insecure narcissist is the savior of comedy, the man who nuked his own comedy special from the internet because it was so bad, a man who stole a joke from one of the most iconic comedians ever and put it in said special. Allegedly.
Doesn't Shallow Grave seem a mite rash? Like, these serial killers are supposed to be so shrewd and cunning and everything, you know? At least according to the TV movies I've seen. But then when it comes time for the grave, they get a little hasty, you know? They're like, there you go, 3 twigs and a leaf. That ought to do it.
My favorite things to watch are like Forensic Files and First 48, those shows that really show you people that murdered somebody and they try to get away with it. I've watched enough of them to where I know how to get away with murder now. Because I know where everybody that gets caught always up. They always leave a hand sticking out of the dirt or some lazy shit like that. You gotta commit. You gotta get your shovel and dig. It's the most important part. You know what I never see on those crime shows? The body was discovered after being buried 75 feet deep in the ground.
The man who is...
You know, isn't that something? Each one of them little comedians in the Rogansphere stole jokes. You know, it looks more and more like old Joe Rogan's call out of Carlos was more a distraction to make the eyes look off of him. Isn't that funny? The man and the men that stood behind Joe Rogan on this write your own jokes, soapbox, we're all guilty of it. Tells you about con men, man. You know, I'm starting to think Joe Rogan's kind of troubled. He's got all that money. He's got a successful show, but he can't have the one thing money can't buy, being funny. Don't you think Joe Rogan just cries himself to sleep on his giant pillow at night? You know, Joe Rogan's one of those people that bought one of those like California king beds, them double king beds, them giant ones. They're like 50 foot long. Just so oh man, it's like fucking finding like a Where's Waldo puzzle, right? When Joe Rogan, he's just like a tiny dot when he lays it. Where's Waldo? Anyways, back to the show. Hey Tony, I want to say one thing. We could see Tony stole jokes. And y'all saying the bucket pool ain't rigged. Get out of here.
Somehow 41, the man who looks like an evil sidekick in a kid's movie. Surely not. Every single person who listens to Kill Tony agrees that Tony...
That dude is straight garbage. I don't even know why anybody puts this guy on. He is just straight garbage. I'm sorry. It is what it is. So many people come in, try and tell me, Martin Phillips. This guy is doo-doo. Your jokes really smell like poo-poo.
Tony Hinchcliffe is the least funny part of Kill Tony. But what about the other comedians on Kill Tony, like roast master David Lucas? This guy is funny, people say, and I agree, especially when he got mocked and humiliated by a 17-year-old. I also like how his entire joke repertoire is basically this.
Oh, he had to do skin tone, chicken bone, leave me alone here. Oh, coming back. He's coming back. Super knuckle, belt buckle, banana truffle here.
Or what about this guy, Jeff Dye, who fled his homeland of Los Angeles due to comedy oppression, arriving in Austin as a comedy refugee, telling Joe Rogan he's buying a house in Austin.
Are they really going to defund the police? Are they really going to, have
I am
struggle
buying
sessions?
A house here.
Are you in Texas?
Yep.
Yeehaw!
Yeah, like about...
Did you see how excited Joe got? He was going on his little rant about LA and how horrible it is. Bro, I'm going to tell you the truth. I will take California anytime over Texas. Any day. Dude, just the beauty in California alone will make me do it. That place is so beautiful. And I know the politics are stupid everywhere. And guess what? Everywhere, we ain't getting shit for our money. It's the same shit everywhere. Well, I mean, technically, it could be drastically different. But I'm just saying, if we take the politics out and we just look at the states outside of the politics, it's California, man.
30, 40 minutes from here.
Nice.
Yeah.
You already locked on it?
No, but I'm shopping for houses on Wednesday. Oh, tomorrow. Not Wednesday,
okay.
tomorrow.
Then started a GoFundMe so his fans could fund his move to Texas after tweeting in the past that GoFundMe should only be used in emergency situations. Then he deleted it because he got backlash. Also, if this guy looks familiar, it's because he's from this iconic clip.
People say Africa like it's a country. I do it too all the time.
Africa is a country.
That's a big continent.
It's a continent, though, yeah.
So, like, Egyptians are technically African.
Yeah, but it's like I'm American, but
I know.
Denver.
What I find interesting about most of these guys is they're not really comedians. They just like to talk. And this is the point it has come to. Rogan has so much influence that bad comedians are asking their fans to fund their move to Austin. Now Jeff has to face the prospect that keeps hopeful comedians up at night. Something that shakes them to their core. The idea that they might have to get a real job. These are the types of people that make up the Austin comedy scene. So we can conclude with the exception of like two people. Most of Rogan's inner sphere is not very funny. And I was under the impression that stand-up was supposed to be funny. Now I look at it and I have no idea what it was, let alone what it is. Although I will say,
I've been telling you that, guys. It just seems stand-up is so messed up right now. You have to realize that this Rogansphere and being on Joe Rogan's podcast and the Rogansphere and the comedy mothership, it seeped out into the rest of the comedy community and made things worse too. You know, when this becomes what most people see as comedy, it really just gives comedy a bad name. And you'll still have, it's like a lot of things, right? You'll still have people that like comedy that'll be looking for it and trying to find people. But, like, it's just turning a lot of people away, especially women, you know? Man. Who would have thought Joe Rogan would do this much damage to America?
the days of having a podcast and that being enough to sell out arenas are over. And all these ex-Joe Rogan guys are proof of that. Brian Callen, who was extradited and now is back in the Roganite sphere, recently complained about not being able to sell out theaters anymore. So the accused put out a comedy special recently, recorded at the Comedy Mothership, and this is it. This is the pinnacle of Rogansphere comedy right now. Bask in it. I want you to absorb this because it's not comedy. It's a TED Talk. This is not comedy. It's preaching.
That kid should have talked to me before he carried out that terrible assassination, that dum-dum. They got cameras that can recognize your gait. Your particular walk is up in the cloud. They can shoot a laser into your heart and pick up your heart signature. How about this?
It also gets you booked at the most popping comedy club in the country. This is not just regular stand-up. This is the pinnacle of stand-up with great jokes like this.
Poppy, I've seen the neighbors. They're pretty old. Let's play it safe. They're probably COVID conscious. Why don't you just go over and introduce yourself, right? I'll bake some Mexican cookies and you go over there. I'm like, what the fuck's a Mexican cookie? What are you talking about? It's like a chocolate chip with salsa all over it? What are you talking about?
It's ironic because Rogan and his buddies would argue that the reason stand-up sucks now is all the wokeness. You can't even make jokes anymore. Now, this might have been true back when comedians were getting slammed by mainstream media outlets like 10 years ago. But nowadays, I'd argue comedy is as open and as free speech friendly as it has been, especially with platforms like YouTube where you can kind of say whatever you want. Like, in a way, comedy should be in the best state it's ever been. You think these guys would be thriving and celebrating in this new comedy meta, but no, they're still complaining, and comedy is in an absolute fugue state because of it. So
did you guys see that clip recently? I randomly came across it, and it was Brian Callen. I don't remember who he was with. Man, he was with, who he was with, but he was talking about, he was like, remember when we were at the Comedy Store? And Brian was like, yeah, we were all in our prime. We were all in our prime, right? We were the best. We were masters of our craft. And he was talking, he was like, and then he goes, me included, you know? And Brendan's like, yeah. I had two thoughts there, right? Maybe that's how Brian Callen's trying to spin his special now. Oh, I'm not in my prime anymore, you know? And then obviously Brian Callen's delusional was the second thought. But I think, wouldn't it be funny if they all just started saying, we're past our prime, we're past our prime? That would be like they try to shrug it off. It's such a con man thing to do. That's the thing, is the con man can get the money, he can scam people, he can have all the nice things, but the thing he really wants, they never get because they're con men. And and the thing they all want to be is funny. Well, maybe they don't. Maybe the reason Brian and Brendan is they're all just pretending to be comedians so that they could have a podcast and be friends with Joe Rogan and get money off of Rogan, you know, off of his name. It's a fun thing to do, by the way.
What is ruining comedy? Ironically, it's the man himself. Yes, Joe Rogan is ruining stand-up, not with just who he platforms, but he's also contributing to it. Joe Rogan is the most influential comedian in the world, no question about it. So why does he hang around guys that are just so unfunny? Well, there's two reasons. One is because he wants to hang out with people less funny than him to make himself look good, or he genuinely thinks these guys are funny because that's his taste in comedy. So to answer this, we gotta look at how good Joe's stand-up is. Ironically, all his stand-up is either completely forgotten or mocked. Ask yourself right now, have you ever heard a single person retell a Joe Rogan joke? Has your friend ever sent you a Joe Rogan joke on Instagram from one of his stand-up sets? Burn the Boats, his most recent special, is genuinely one of the worst comedy specials I have ever seen. I did a members video ranking the worst specials I've ever seen, and this one ranks pretty high, I'd say. Not the worst, but it's up there. I've heard the theory that Joe simply doesn't understand humor, in the same way I simply don't understand astrophysics. I could talk about it all I want, but I will simply not understand. Here's an example of what I mean.
Like she's like a big headdress, black lady, and I go, hey, watch that whip around the African, and I swear to God, the cameras just went, doo, like the whole thing shut down. Felt like the power went out. And I was like, well, that was weird, and they fired me right after.
Obviously a joke about slavery. Now, what does comedy titan Joe Rogan say about this?
Wait a minute. If someone's wearing African garb, you can't say the African?
Clips like these are one in a million. Dudes have made entire compilations of Joe just blatantly missing jokes on his podcast. Like this Theo Von joke here where Joe responds with a, actually?
Did you know that that's where those powdered wigs came from? You know those powdered wigs that old dudes used to wear and the people in court used to wear? And
oh, yeah.
That all came from a pair of rich, noble, where were they again? In France?
Wiggers, I think they called them.
No, wiggers are white people that wish they were black. It's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
Joe constantly talks about how comedians think so different to pedestrians like you and me because they can joke around with each other and riff. So watch the comedy master riff with his buddies right here.
How many authors?
You know, like the thing I hear a lot from people that don't like, you know, the commentary making fun of Joe Rogan is you're trying to get these people canceled. Not really. I mean, y'all can listen to him. Stupid people need something, right? The problem is, the main problem for me is all of the political influence and the trying to change social norms and that shit. The canceling thing, like people are going to be around that you don't like and just ignore them, right? But the problem for me is these guys are trying to like gatekeep and take over comedy. They're just trying to steal from the people, whether it's politically or in comedy. And it really bothers me. And I got to say something, right? But don't think we want everybody canceled. You hear that? That's what people are saying. You just want to cancel Dave Chappelle. No, I don't care. Dave Chappelle's funny. But he's getting involved in bed with all these people too. And then they all try to lie about it like they're not. And it has nothing to do with anything about these people except that what they're doing with the powers that be and the people that control everything and with intent to take as much from you and make you robots, basically. Just make you mindless robots that do whatever they say. Anyways. That's the reason right there. You know, they could go off and do their fart ball jokes and shit. Like I said, stupid people need something. But just keep these stupid people out of decisions, you know, and laws and policies that affect everyday people. That's all. Is that a lot to ask for? I don't think so. You know, I don't think so. Just go. We'll just, I had another idea. Okay. How do we keep them entertained? I say we just build them like a little facility out in the woods. Of course, same idea. We've got to fence them in. We can't let them back out. And out in the woods, and we give them just a bunch of bows. Now, Now, we release a large amount of deer in there, and eventually the deer are going to run out.
No. There's a lot more.
Musicians?
How many musicians? How many doctors? How many lawyers?
Now, with all these clips, I think one could come to the conclusion that Joe really doesn't understand comedy or stand-up. I mean, look at the guys being pushed hard by Joe Rogan, even in the last few years. Even when he had a chance to reset in Austin, sure, he hit on a few, but he also had some wild swing and misses. And the beauty of every comedian having a podcast now is most people realize that these dudes are smarmy, unlikable assholes. People in the Rogansphere presented themselves like heroes to the everyman, but were the farthest thing from it. Even good comedians like Bill Burr can't escape this. Remember when he went on a crusade against billionaires in the USA, but then shilled for Saudi billionaires because they paid him a lot of money? Then calling everyone racist who called him out, but they have a fucking cheesecake factory.
Isn't that what Dave did? Everybody was saying anybody talk about Dave is racist. No. See, it's the same playbook, guys. It's the same playbook. You know, you have to ask yourself in these situations, you know, Bill calls you a racist for calling out Saudi Arabia. I always say, well, in my argument, I didn't bring up race. You did. That's the end of that. That's the end of that. It's just a playbook because they can't bring up the actual topic. And they all know it's bad. They all know it's bad. They know the history of that place, what they've done, all this is the one issue I'm just like, come on. But when you've tried to be this like political voice or this man of the people or this like, you know, I stand with integrity, and then you don't. And here's the thing. A lot of the public's going to get mad for you for calling out Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, Andrew Schultz, all those guys that went over there. They're going to make up every kind of name. Every kind of name. But guess what? There'll be times you will stand alone. You will stand alone for saying the thing that needs to be said or not standing for something. But that ship they are all sailing on called delusion always comes right back around. Right in front of me, confirming exactly what I said. We'll see.
For you guys.
And I'm thinking like, is that a Starbucks next to a Pete's Coffee, next to a Burger King, next to a McDonald's, next to a Pizza Hut, next to a Dunkin' Donuts, next to a Krispy Kreme, next to a Cheesecake Factory?
What's weird about this is I don't even think people would mind if...
Do you see how this is the whataboutism things? They this whole Saudi Arabia, all their excuses are that exactly. But they do this over here, or it's just like this over here. How could you say that about that back there? Or these people did this, these people did that. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating that they lie to our face. And what's even more frustrating is people that are just don't have any critical thinking or the ability to, let's say, have reading comprehension, are going to believe what these guys are saying. And it's obvious. I mean, they were saying the same thing. Oh, there ain't no files on Epstein. Then there's files. Oh, this is just a hoax. Oh, we're going to, and then we're going to show you integrity, right? And then we get them, and it's all blacked out. Doesn't that just make you upset? Aren't you tired of that shit? You know, I do something wrong. You got the tax guy going to come after you. The police going to come after you. Whatever you did, they got something to come after you. But when these guys do, like, you have to understand, here's the gravity of the situation. Is these guys got paid by people that can start wars, can have you executed. They killed over 300. They executed over 300, which is bigger than 240, by the way, if we're comparing numbers. They executed in 2025 over 300 people there. I think it's like 357, somewhere up there. Isn't that crazy? Has your town ever had an execution in your lifetime? They were mingling with those people. They were paid by those people. Doesn't that just creep you out? People in America be like, oh, you can't take that drug money, but you can take that blood money. It's the same thing. Oh, but we don't really have standards. It's all just opportunists. Not where humans are.
He just said he was doing it because they offered him a lot of money. You don't have to go on this crusade about why Saudi Arabia is better than America. Like, watch this.
We're going to Riyadh. The House of Saud is paying us hundreds of thousands of dollars, some of us millions, not me, but they're paying millions of dollars to comedians. We're taking the money. How about that?
Now look at these comedians. Tell me, are they supposed to be funny? You see what I mean? What the happened to stand-up comedy? Why the are these people so popular despite being so unfunny? It's because...
Here's the real reason. Here is the real reason. Noticed that all of their careers, and Joe Rogan's podcast as well, got significantly worse when they involved corporations. Talking about putting your specials up on Netflix, the Spotify deal, all the other big business deals, Joe Rogan getting a corporate sponsor and then pushing it down on all the rest of his Rogansphere buzz. Blue Chew. That's when it happened. Whenever you get corporations involved, not like these guys, you know how I feel about these guys, but the corporations made it even worse. It changed how Joe Rogan talked. Look, he changed when he went to Spotify. That's when it all happened. Isn't it crazy? Corporations are just nothing but money-hungry machines. They don't care about nothing but getting money. That's why. That is why. Beyond all their personal reasons, all the reasons we don't like them, one of the main reasons is they tied their shows to corporations.
They have the second pillar of the Rogan empire, the podcast. The podcast is essential to a stand-up comedian these days. If you don't have one, you may as well work a stupid pedestrian job like teacher or firefighter, you dumbass who worked hard. I have to talk into a microphone a couple times a week. Try doing my job. Now, these podcasts are labeled as comedy, so the first thing you will notice is that they are completely devoid of any humor. The purpose of a comedy podcast is not to be funny. It's to be a modern day philosopher, the last line of defense against the woke mob. Look at the way these guys talk about stand-up.
How many of us are there? Let's talk about that.
True that.
Is there even 1,000 of us on Earth?
No.
Probably not, if you want to be honest.
I was thinking about, you got like the woke and the right. What about the people like me that just want basic human decency? Can we be called like the decents? Oh, he's just decent. Oh, get out of here with your decent ideas. Still sounds good when they insult you, huh?
Yeah.
Like a real headliner? How many of us?
Yeah.
There might be 500 of us on Earth.
On Earth.
There's 1 million doctors in America alone.
Yeah.
How many comics are there? Real ones.
Real ones.
Guys can go up there and light a room on fire.
Yes.
Maybe a few hundred. It's hard to get there.
Yeah.
Now, forgive me.
Isn't it just so crazy? That is just how delusional these people are. He's talking, I believe that's Earthquake, and he's trying to tell Earthquake about comedy like he's one of the people that can light a room on fire. Oh, when I see those clips, it just really, I'm just like, man, you know, you got to say what it is. Even I know my show is a webcam reaction show in my game room. It ain't shit. You know, you gotta, like, I know that. It's about as little low effort as possible. I know this. So if I know that about my shit, Joe's got to know. But they're like, it's like, I don't know if you ever done a sport or you played an instrument or anything that you could get talented at. there's always that guy that talks a big game, right? I like to think about it like guitar. Oh, yeah, I was doing this. I could play this. And, oh, yeah, I got this kind of guitar. And then somehow everybody has a guitar or acoustic or like, you know, there's a little amp. Remember in high school, you'd bring your little amps, those little Marshalls? Wasn't that something? I remember, yeah, carrying amps around high school. Like we were cool. Yeah, have those band shirts on. We were emo those days, huh? But I was never a fan of like the you know, like black hair hanging over your eye. I liked it before. You have to understand, emo used to just be like emotional rock, I guess would be a good way for it. And it was just like guys playing like hardcore with more like melodies and, you know, and it used to be good. And then it evolved into the black hair thing and the checkered board belts with the little metal things on them. Damn, I sound old. That's how my grandpa would have described it. You know, them little metal things? Holy shit. Those were the days.
If I don't think the court jesters should be treated like the fearless knights. Rogan was easily the biggest of these podcasts, and despite what people say, he was good enough at interviewing that it made for some decent entertainment. I mean, I used to be a fan, especially like 2017 era Joe Rogan. It wasn't a comedy podcast, but they did talk about comedy a lot. So naturally, because it did so well back in the day, it meant every other comedian had to rip him off. Every shitbox stand-up had to have their own podcast, where they didn't do comedy, might I add, but they talked about doing comedy. If you wanted to be a successful comedian back in the day, you had to have a podcast. Also, you have to invite other comedians on your podcast to talk about stand-up comedy so that you can go on their podcast and talk about stand-up comedy so that you both can go on Joe Rogan and talk about stand-up despite not even doing stand-up anymore because you're too busy doing podcasts where you talk about doing stand-up. We have reached hyper reality and comedy podcasts. There is no bearing to stand-up comedy anymore. And the comedic element is that there is no comedy. You see what I mean?
You know, I always thought the comedy was like the podcast was to prop up the comedy. It was to get people in the door, to sell tickets, to pull the wool over their eyes that they were good comedians. I always thought the podcast, because they all have podcasts, and you recognize how annoying. Like, nobody wants to deal with these guys. They all just rotate on each other's podcasts constantly. It's just a constant rotation of these same guys. And it's just like, dude, why don't you interview people off the street every day? Go in a grocery store, meet a clerk. Hey, I have this big podcast. Can I interview you about your life or the interesting, you know? We need to start talking to people. I like that. I like interesting, weird people. I like the weird ones. You know, interviews with weird people. Man, here we are in the Rogansphere, though.
I mean, when I question what the even is comedy anymore, seeing a dude go on stage and rant about his own personal politics and talking with the intellectual depth of a 14-year-old. This is the state we're in. There are a few good comedy podcasts out there, but for every secret podcaster come town, you have an avalanche of guys talking about stand-up and what's wrong with the world. So why did Joe Rogan get so big? You see, Joe Rogan does interviews. This style worked really well when he was blowing up because it was extremely unique. I know we see it all the time now, but back then, celebrity interviews were very short, contrived, and inauthentic. They basically told you nothing about the person, only just that their new movie was coming out. With this long style...
Can we go back to those? You know, if I was a celebrity, yep, I don't want y'all to know nothing about me. Thank you very much. I wouldn't even do them, though. I mean, that's fair. I think a lot of the problems in the world is because everybody's in each other's business. I mean, I'm here, Rogan. But, you know, I schedule this. I pencil this into my schedule. And that's the only time. You know, after I'm done thinking about Rogan, I take off my yellow hat, right? I starch it, iron it out for my next day. You know, I do a couple blessings, and I exit the room, and I don't think about Rogan after that. You know? It's like I punch in the clock. Oh, it's Rogan time. It's Rogan time.
podcast interview, you really got to know who the person was. This works great when you're interviewing.
Do you think Tony says that when he comes into the bedroom and sees Joe laying on the bed? It's Rogan time.
Big celebrities or interesting people, but it doesn't really make sense when you're interviewing other comedians who have their own podcast. I know Bert Kreischer is an alcoholic. Great. Now give me 400 episodes of that. What's interesting is that there are some funny moments in Joe's podcast. Some. However, what you'll notice is that most of these are from before the pandemic. Now, I have a theory about Joe Rogan in the pandemic. This is just my theory, but Joe Rogan died from COVID, and this is a clone standing in for him. Because pre-2020 Joe Rogan is so different from post-2020 Joe Rogan. And this might be due to a number of reasons, but the biggest one is COVID. The most obvious example is the horse dewormer incident. Despite all my criticisms of Rogan, I think he was done.
You know what's funny? When I was working out in the mountains on a campaign, and I remember we were at a ranch. It was during COVID, right? I was gone for like months working on this stuff, and I remember we were doing something at a ranch, and I saw a big old thing of ivermectin, and I thought it was funny. And so I went to go take a picture of it, and they're like, no, don't take a picture of that. We don't want that to be on social media. We don't want to get in trouble. And I was just like, yeah, I remember that. That's my ivermectin story right there. It wasn't really great. It wasn't. Okay.
Dirty here by a media smear campaign. Now, before you leave your Reddit comment, hear me out. This was around the time Joe Rogan was becoming super popular and mainstream media was becoming less and less trusted. Joe Rogan goes on record and says he got the virus and treated it with ivermectin. Now, I'm not a virologist, so I don't know if this works for sure, but what I do know is that when CNN claimed Joe Rogan was taking horse dewormer, that was insane. Just in my limited research back then and now, while ivermectin is available in a form for animals, it also has been used on humans to treat numerous ailments. Labeling it as Joe Rogan took horse dewormer is so slimy and dishonest, it's hard not to side with Joe, even if you think he's a moron for treating the virus the way he did. If we're talking pure intellectual honesty, their goal was to mislead. Despite Joe proving that he took the version made for humans, he also had the main medical expert from CNN on, and he basically had to admit that they did him dirty. It's my opinion that they wanted to get at him for a while, and this was their opportunity to pounce and create some sort of smear campaign. I think being misrepresented would upset most people. The weird thing is that there are so many things you could criticize Joe Rogan for, like how he set off a bomb in San Antonio during the recording of Burn the Boats.
One guy pulls out a gun, boom, shoots that guy, bang, shoots that guy, boom, blows his own brains out, leaves one guy alive going, ah! Flying all the way to Mars, strapped in next to 3 dead dudes.
The point of this is that
Joe. I've been wondering about Joe and his next comedy special, because he said he was working on one and he was planning to do another one. And the problem I always come to is, what do you do, Joe? Knowing you as Joe Rogan, how do you make it better? How? How do you make Burn the Boats better? You're just going to do another Burn the Boat. It's going to turn into another Burn the Boat. Joe, this one took you, what, like 5-6 years to do? You know? I just don't know how that little cog in Joe Rogan's head works. You know? I don't know what he's thinking about. Right? When he says he wants to do another special? Are you fucking kidding me? We do not need... What? Who asked for it? Somebody told you? Joe, you should... Dude, your friends know. Everybody knows, Joe. You got to come out the comedy closet sometimes and admit you're not a comedian. Or wait, it probably wouldn't work like that, would it? If he was in the... Anyways, my analogies are apparently shit today. But you get the point.
I see it as a turning point for Joe Rogan. He used to be a guy who openly had any conversation, but since he was done dirty by the mainstream media, he started going in direct opposition to them. Now, I get it. Obviously, he wasn't going to be sympathetic to those people. Furthermore, I think Joe Rogan was always a counterculture guy, but as the Overton window...
Dude, Joe looks like a con man right there. Who the fuck wears that shirt? I shouldn't have said that. Y'all are going to tell me it's going to be terrible. I hear you. I know what you're thinking. I do. I see you.
Shifted, he went from fighting against the mainstream to becoming the mainstream. Alternative media is bigger than it has ever been in history, and Joe Rogan is the face of it. Unfortunately, because Joe is just one guy, he is the trusted source. He is the face. This leaves him way more open to manipulation than something like CNN or Fox News. Not because those aren't corrupted, but it's because they are. Everyone knows CNN and Fox News are biased, bought and paid for. Joe Rogan isn't bought and paid for, at least not that we know of. But when he has the head of the FBI, government employees, and other people on, it's hard to believe that they're just going on because they're big fans of him. This inadvertently sides the biggest name in alternative media and the comedy prophet with the State Department. This would have killed a 2016 Joe Rogan listener to hear him become an extension of government propaganda. And he knows it. Like when he had Kash Patel, FBI director, on his podcast, and he basically said, yeah, Epstein? That's nothing. It's boring anyway. How convenient. Now, Joe realized this was bullshit, and he kind of said so on his podcast. So the White House sent a lady to talk to him about aliens, which was the most obvious, let him play with the new toys so he doesn't talk about Epstein move ever. This is the world we live in. A bad comedian has the State Department trying to distract him from a global pedophile ring because they think he's too influential.
Isn't that crazy? We are living in times where we see our government cover up one of the craziest things ever. And it's because our leaders, our president, some of our politicians, celebrities, powerful figures, they're all involved. And everybody knows this, and they're still covering up. I wouldn't be surprised if the White House didn't just say, black shit out. It don't matter. What are they going to do? We could drag this out forever. That's what I think they're doing. They're just like, they're blatantly, what are they going to do? And if they can do something, they got to get it voted on, go to court, you know? They're just going to drag this on forever until Americans do. Have you seen what the farmers are doing? Isn't that in Brussels, right? Yeah. Anyways, they're like spraying shit on the buildings, dumping manure in the streets. They've had it. I feel like people have had it. I certainly have. I feel so frustrated about how all this, it's just complete opposite. See, I think that's the thing that the millennial generation got, is we got all the lectures, all the things about manners, all the things about doing what you're told, do the best you can, be successful, go to college, serve your country. And then if you do those things, everything is going to be okay. So what we did is we were taught those. We go out, we go to college, we serve our country, and it's time to come around and, hop back into this life and start your adult life. And it was all horse shit. It was all horse shit. And that would happen to our generation. And then when we become the age where we could start owning some of these businesses, owning some of these property, owning a home, they jacked up all the prices. So now they're the millennial, and then it hits us, and then the generation below's shit out of luck too. And I feel like after all this time, I'm just sick of it. That's why these Joe Rogan people piss me off, because they're just promoting more horse shit that takes away from us. We got to get these con men, these stupid men, these people that only care about greed and power out of fucking office. But that's exactly why they run for office, so they control everything. So, ugh. It's shit, man. It is shit.
Reached the point beyond parody. What's interesting is how close Joe has gotten to Peter Thiel, who was associated with Epstein, loves Israel, and is the CEO of Palantir. You know,
everybody was like, when I said, has Joe Rogan been to an Epstein party? You doubters out there. Maybe that's why he's not talking about the files either.
The government mass surveillance Big Brother company. Oh, and
allegedly.
By the way, in his free time, he loves the Antichrist. I am not kidding. Despite this being something the old Joe Rogan and, in my opinion, anyone would be shitting their pants over. I mean, who wants mass China-style surveillance unless you like shock your dog? I mean, that doesn't seem like a good idea. Joe is extremely defensive of Peter Thiel and Palantir.
You want to get to him, you got to go through me.
Which is weird because he usually can't shut up about conspiracy theories. But when a literal Antichrist-loving tech billionaire has a company that makes millions...
I'm sorry. Just one look at Peter Thiel and I don't trust him. If you did something to yourself to look evil, he just looks evil. His eyes look soulless. His skin is tight and like, ugh. It's like leather. And Peter Thiel.
Military technology named after the evil wizard orb from Lord of the Rings that lets you spy on anyone. Well, honestly, I don't know. I'm just friends with him. Theo Von was talking about how sketchy Palantir was on his podcast, and Joe just played dumb. But when he talked about how billionaire pedos are being protected right now, which, you know, come on, I think we all know that, Joe pushed back. He pushed back more on Theo Von than Kash Patel, which is insane to me. It looked like there was a brief moment where Joe realized what was going on, and either he changed his mind or he doesn't care. I think the reason is he's experiencing some sort of cognitive dissonance right now. He thinks free speech is absolute. That was what their whole comedy crusade was about, was the censoring of speech in comedy spheres. He thinks government overreach is bad and has been insanely critical of out-of-touch elites. Now he's having those people on his podcast and running defense for them. A clear...
Wouldn't it be crazy is the reason Joe Rogan changed in 2020 and he went political and he started pushing their propaganda and for Trump and all this is because he was in the Epstein files and needed Trump in there. They all needed Trump in there to protect him because they knew it was getting to the point. But here's my thoughts, right? They've done the JFK files for how long? Could happen.
Contradiction to his core beliefs. So now he has to rationalize it in his head why Palantir actually isn't scary and how billionaires are just normal good people who have everyone's best interests at heart, because he knows his words and his behavior contradict. And when anyone calls him out, he uses a tactic to essentially absolve himself. Joe Rogan has this thing where he goes, "Look, I'm an idiot," when he wants to deflect criticism of himself. This allows him to not have to back up any of his opinions. And I agree, he's an idiot, because from an outsider's perspective, the State Department played him like a fiddle. The question is, how aware of this is he? Clearly they took advantage of his platform, but now is Joe aware of that and complicit, or just stupid? I just find it strange how much he chills with Epstein associate Peter Thiel and then suddenly doesn't care about Epstein. Joe used to be the one banging the drum for the everyman. He was the dude who would talk about this stuff unapologetically, call out bullshit. That stuff pissed him off, which is fine. Culture war stuff admittedly pisses me off too, and I'm sure it does the same to you guys. But with Joe, the difference here is kind of interesting. A kitty litter box put in a kindergarten that was proven to be a hoax? This is insane. We should be up in arms. But all of a sudden, it's revealed that the global elites are trafficking children to an island in the Caribbean to have eyes wide shut parties, have direct influence on global politics, and are funding mass surveillance companies with pretty damning evidence coming out every single day. And Joe is like, well, okay, let's back up here for a sec. It's one thing to not call this out. I don't think he has that obligation necessarily, but he seemingly endorses it. Why though? Why get involved in any of this? Joe Rogan is supposed to be a comedian. Why is he talking to billionaires who want to practice radical accelerationism? Well, what's obvious about Joe is that he wants to be taken very seriously, which is why he constantly inflates the value of being a stand-up comedian, as well as all of his friends. Unfortunately for Joe, his stand-up is not very good, but his podcast is serious. So talking to such
Isn't it crazy? People are so concerned about taken seriously. And I think that probably causes a lot of the ego and the problems all over the world and all over the internet. If we just realized we were all stupid, well, some drastically in the Rogansphere specifically stupider. But that's not what I'm talking about. That we're all just dumb humans, right? You know? It doesn't make sense when you take yourself seriously. I can't. And it's hard. It's hard to learn. Sometimes I feel like, yeah, it can be hard. Maybe you just need to age. But it's just no point. You can't really care. You know? You can't really care. As soon as you realize other people don't care about you, and you just kind of got to make it through this world the best you can, makes life easier.
Influential people, regardless of if they're trying to manipulate you, gives you some legitimate authority.
You will respect my authority.
Joe might even be aware his stand-up sucks. I don't know about that, but I'm sure he's seen the Elephant Graveyard video, which, by the way, is a masterpiece. But where he does get legitimate respect is in his podcast. While he isn't a bad interviewer, he did get very lucky with his podcast. With the timing, he was kind of the first guy to pioneer this style, and it's not a very hard job. I think the reason Joe does this is he wants to be seen as a hard worker, which is why he does ice baths and saunas all the time, even though he doesn't have to. All his buddies have the same mindset too. This grind set, I work so hard, you gotta get off your ass, motivational speaker, when all they do is talk about doing stand-up, not even doing stand-up, like I mentioned. Judging on this video, you might think that there are no good comedians and comedy podcasts out there anymore. That's not true. There are plenty of funny dudes out there, even in the mainstream. Tim Dillon, Shane Gillis, Stavros Halkias. But what do these guys have that Joe and his buffoons don't? Humility. These guys aren't pretending they're the saviors of free speech. They're just funny dudes who tell jokes and want to make people laugh. I look at someone like Stav, who, much like Joe, got successful doing podcasting whilst also being a stand-up comedian. Stand-up wasn't what blew him up to massive success. It was podcasting. Stav understands that.
I mean, not to say a podcast. This is my problem because I do believe in art and I do like to think about it, but what I've made my living off of is the two lowest forms of art in existence, which is stand-up and podcasting, respectively. Mm-hmm. Podcasting is the one thing where I'm like, wow, it's the one thing that's made me like, I guess stand-up's art because this is fucking bullshit. You know what I mean?
Assuming both of these are art, podcasting is probably the lowest form of art there is, with stand-up comedy not being much higher. Joe Rogan has taken the opposite approach. It's actually hard being a podcaster. Therefore, being a stand-up comedian is basically a Herculean undertaking. And what I've found is the more serious a comedian takes themselves, the more unlikable they become. And this is true for anyone who makes low art. Podcasters, comedians, YouTubers, Twitch streamers. In all reality, these aren't hard jobs. Let's be honest. And if your comedy podcast revolves around you talking about how hard you work and how hard you grind, people aren't gonna like you. Like Joe Rogan could just stop doing kettlebells, ice baths, and saunas tomorrow, and nothing would change. Your average person can't stop working. The idea that being a podcaster, YouTuber, streamer is harder than working a regular job is perpetrated by people who've never had a real job or haven't worked one in like 20 years. And just from a personal story, not too long ago, I went and worked as a PA on set for a commercial. And let me tell you, being a YouTuber is 10 times easier than having to do that 4 or 5 times a week. I met some of the most hardworking dudes on these sets who are not being fairly compensated. And they're just normal dudes. Joe Rogan talking to comics is different because they aren't like normal people. They can talk about comedy to each other. That's why Joe Rogan and his buddies think comedians' brains work differently. Not realizing you can say this literally about any profession. Military members can relate to other military members. You're not special because of your career. It's just a part of you. The best entertainment.
Ain't that something? I notice that too, man. The less and less I care about people's jobs and stuff, you know, like especially work. At some point, I've done enough work, right? I gotta start living, right? I gotta spend time. I try to work as little as possible. I have to work, but I make sure. Not a second over, not a millisecond over. I just got to do what I got to do and get out there. I don't treat it like it's some sanctuary. So many people get so wrapped up in their jobs and then their personal life is shit. These people, we got to grind. We got to work as much as possible. You know, I don't remember where I was, but somebody said, oh, I got to do this job. And you know, no, somebody told me the reason I do this job is for the people that work here. I don't know. Oh, I straight up said, they don't care about you. They ain't going to risk themselves for you because this is about survival. It ain't about friendship. They going to turn. Are you get in trouble? I don't know him. Who that? Him? Shit. I ain't never seen him before in my life. You ever trusted a coworker and then you got in some heat? Hey, where'd you go? That's how it is in jobs. I don't make friends with no employees. Of course, you got to be cordial. No, you don't want nobody knowing your bit. You don't want, jobs are just pure shitholes of drama. Wherever people are in large numbers, there shall be drama. God, I fucking hate offices, work offices. Even if you stay to yourself and you let everybody know, yo guys, I'm just here to work. I don't care about your drama. It always comes. Somebody's got to tell you about, he did this, and they get you to try to make you hate the manager or hate the girl over there or hate that guy because he doesn't believe or do or work as hard. You know what I mean? It's miserable. Who chose this? When people started making societies, they had a choice. And this is what we chose? Mindless work. I think it was like something, it'd have to be like 74 or 75% of people don't enjoy their job. Only something, like a small percentage of people actually find their work fulfilling, huh? Who the fuck did this to us? Who?
Entertainers are those who can laugh at themselves. That's why Stav's podcast, Come Town, was so successful and why people love Stav. The butt of the entire podcast was how degenerate and awful they are. This isn't even true for just comedians. Look at streamers who can't ever be the butt of a joke versus a streamer who's always the butt of their own jokes and laughs at themselves. The way these comics suck up to Rogan and kiss his ass is so pathetic because a real comic wouldn't be afraid to make fun of Rogan. Not in a mean way, but even in a ribbing way that most people do.
I'm obviously not a fucking bomb expert, but I talked to one.
You should see erect.
He can't stop himself.
I'm sure these comedy assassins would be able to figure this out for themselves, but apparently not. How are guys that have been doing stand-up for 20 years somehow getting worse? I understand you might get worse at podcasting after doing it for so long, like if you ran out of funny stories or whatever, but the answer is simple. Because they like the idea of doing stand-up and calling themselves a comedian, but they don't actually want to put in the work to do stand-up. Take Tony Hinchcliffe. Allegedly, he's at his best when he's just making fun of autistic people that come on his show. But have you ever tried to watch any of his stand-up comedy? Like I said, his special is so bad, he scrubbed the thing from the internet. Yet despite this, he's seen as one of the success stories in Rogan's Austin comedy sphere. So did Joe Rogan save comedy from wokeness?
Isn't that crazy? He's making a good point. This just affirms their con man. When it comes time to actually do the thing you sold people on, you hyped yourself up about, you claim to be, they can't. That's just how it is. And it's true. Just look at all the reviews on their specials and their ratings. It's terrible. They just need to get out of the spotlight. Y'all can have your little cult. I mean, there's tons already, but you need to go ahead and get out of the politics, get out of the government propaganda thing. Just go ahead and get out. Now, I have this idea about a fence. It involves a fence. And you inside of it. And all the Rogansphere. Can I convince you?
It depends on if you think he was responsible for the relaxing of speech rules and the disappearance of cancel culture, which I don't think he was. I personally think it was just a natural culture shift to something more moderate, away from censorship. He was pushing for this, but with any cultural progression, it's likely people are gonna make a few mistakes before they get it right. Cancel culture was born out of actors and actresses getting abused in Hollywood by powerful dudes. It's just a side effect. It had to cancel Shane Gillis, which might have been the best thing to happen to him, but it feels like we've hit a point now where we can call out predatory stuff without ruining someone's career because they did an Asian accent. I think it's just a natural cultural progression. I also think it's funny how guys like Dave Chappelle complain about free speech in America and how it's dying, but will happily go to Saudi Arabia to do comedy for a blood money dictatorship who executes people for attempting to speak out against them. They literally weren't allowed to make jokes about the government or royal family. In America, making fun of the government has been done so much, it's almost hack at this point. These dudes have no principles because they'll sell out to billionaires who want to censor speech. They don't care about freedom of speech because they're just like the social justice warriors. I love free speech until it's speech my handlers.
Did you see who that was? They love free speech, yet they work for the people that limit it. You saw your man right there. You saw your man. You want to cover up for him too, Mr. Chappelle. I'll say it.
Tell me is bad. So no, Joe Rogan didn't save comedy from wokeness. But did he ruin comedy? Yeah, probably.
It's almost like a pervert wizard waved a magic spell in the whole world. Like, with a wave of this wand, you can walk through the women's locker room with a hard cock, and anybody who complains is a Nazi. Abracadabra! And it just worked.
It is bad, folks. You know, please like and share. And subscribe. Please do that. They can. I don't want to cancel anybody. I mean, people tried to cancel me. You know, try to get my YouTube channel fuck with. And I've seen other people in comedy. We're not the ones canceling, folks. We're not the ones calling out for cancellations. It's these guys. It's Joe Rogan. Copyright strikes. You know, that take down your channel. They could take down your channel with shit like that. They try. You saw it happening now to the bigger channels. Y'all thought I was lying. Y'all thought I was lying. Oh, he just making up this stuff until you start seeing all those other people. Even the guy that hangs out with the Skankfest dudes. He got one. You see? We got to be careful here, guys, and we got to speak up. And they can do their little thing. I have an idea with a fence, but we got to get these guys. These guys are dumb. We gotta usher them out of politics. Stop influencing our culture and our men. They're just bad influences. They're bad influences. We could do better. We could do better. Well, at least I think we could. Let me know what you think in the comments. Peace.
Don't stay.